Somewhere behind you right now a floorboard creaks, your shoulders tighten, your breath catches, your heart rate spikes, and all of this happens before you even turn around, before your mind has produced a single thought, before you know what made the sound at all. You flinched, and you had no idea why. Most people assume fear starts in the mind. A thought appears and then the body reacts, but that is backwards. The body moves first. The mind catches up later, sometimes half a second later, sometimes longer. In that gap, something ancient is running the show, something that has nothing to do with the modern, thinking version of you. What is it, and why is it still in charge? To understand this, you have to go back, not decades, not centuries, millions of years, to a time when your ancestors lived in landscapes filled with predators who were faster, stronger, and better camouflaged than they were. A rustle in the grass could mean wind. It could also mean a leopard. There was no time to think it through. There was only time to react. Neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux spent decades mapping exactly how this reaction works. He found that a small almond-shaped structure deep in the brain, the amygdala, receives sensory information through two separate pathways. One pathway is slow. It runs through the cortex, the part of the brain responsible for conscious thought, reasoning, and recognizing what something actually is. The other pathway is fast. It skips the cortex entirely. Ledoux called it the low road. The low road is crude. It cannot tell the difference between a stick and a snake. It only asks one question: does this look dangerous enough to react to right now? If the answer might be yes, it fires. Immediately. Your muscles tense, your pupils dilate, your blood moves toward your limbs, all before the slower, smarter part of your brain has finished processing what it even saw. This is why you can jump at a shadow. This is why a coiled garden hose can make your stomach drop for a fraction of a second before you realize what it is. The low road would rather be wrong 100 times than be wrong once when it actually mattered. Think about the math of survival for a moment. If your ancestor heard a rustle and it was only the wind and they flinched anyway, they wasted a small amount of energy. Mildly annoying. If your ancestor heard a rustle and it was a predator and they did not flinch, they were dead. Evolution does not reward accuracy. It rewards outcomes. And a brain that overreacts to danger survives more often than a brain that waits for certainty. This is sometimes called the smoke detector principle, a term popularized by evolutionary psychiatrist Randolph Ness. A smoke detector that goes off every time you make toast is annoying, but a smoke detector that fails to go off during an actual fire is fatal. So the smoke detector is built to be oversensitive on purpose. Your nervous system works the same way. It would rather give you 100 false alarms than miss one real threat. Your ancestors were not living in fear all the time, though. That is another common misconception. Their brains simply had an early warning system that operated below conscious awareness, one that could activate in milliseconds and shut off just as fast once the danger was confirmed to be nothing. Speed in this system matters more than precision. Here is where it gets stranger. This same reflex built for leopards in tall grass is still fully wired into your brain today. You are not living in that world anymore. You are living in offices, apartments, cars, cities. And yet the machinery underneath your ribs has not updated its software in any meaningful way. It still treats a sudden loud noise, an unexpected touch, or a fast-moving shadow the same way it would treat a genuine predator. Psychologist Robert Zajonc argued something that unsettled a lot of his colleagues when he first proposed it. He suggested that emotional reactions can occur before and completely independent of cognitive appraisal. In other words, you can feel something before you know what you are feeling it about. Preferences, he wrote, need no inferences. Fear is the clearest example of this. The jolt happens. The explanation comes afterward, stitched together by a mind trying to make sense of what your body already did. This is why people who experience a near miss in traffic often say the same thing. Their foot was already on the brake before they consciously registered the danger. Their hands had already turned the wheel. Ask them what happened and they will describe the reasoning after the fact, as if it were a decision. It was not a decision. It was a reflex borrowed from an ancestor who never drove a car in their life. So why does this matter now, in a world with almost no leopards? Because your low road cannot tell the difference between a real threat and a modern stand-in for one. A phone buzzing in the middle of the night, a stranger's raised voice in a meeting, an unexpected email from your boss. None of these will kill you, but the amygdala does not know that. It only knows patterns that resemble danger, and it responds the same way it always has, with a flood of stress hormones preparing you to fight or flee from something that, more often than not, requires neither. This is part of why chronic stress feels so exhausting. Your body is being told, dozens of times a day, to prepare for a physical threat that never actually arrives. The energy gets mobilized and then has nowhere to go. Over time, that mismatch between an ancient alarm system and a modern, mostly safe environment is one of the reasons researchers believe anxiety has become so widespread. Not because people are weaker than they used to be. Because the alarm was never designed for this many false positives, this close together, this often. There is something almost comforting in understanding this, though. The flinch is not a flaw. It is not weakness, and it is not something broken in you. It is proof that a system built over millions of years is still doing exactly what it was designed to do, protecting you first and explaining itself later. You did not choose to jump at the sound behind you. You could not have chosen otherwise. The choosing happens after, in the part of your mind that gets to decide what to do with the information your body has already acted on. Knowing this changes what you can do with it. You cannot turn off the low road. Nobody can. But you can recognize the gap between the jolt and the story your mind builds around it. The next time your heart races over a notification, a slammed door, an unfamiliar voice, you can pause in that half-second and ask a different question than your ancestors ever needed to ask. Not is this a leopard, but is this actually dangerous, or is this just old wiring firing in a new world? That question alone, asked calmly again and again, is something your ancestors never had the luxury of asking. They needed speed. You have something they did not. The time and the safety to look back at the reaction after it happens and decide what it means. So the next time something creaks behind you and your whole body reacts before your mind even knows why, remember what is actually happening. That is not a glitch. That is not overreaction. That is a survival system, tested across millions of years, still faithfully doing its job, still trying to keep you alive, long after most of what it was built to fear has disappeared. You flinched, and now finally you know why.